day that I think of as part of my education was the day of the Baltimore City Council was to hear a resolution, or actually it would have been an ordinance, that would have outlawed unvented gas space heaters in the rundown apartments that people lived in. These were all places where people were renting from somebody who owned hundreds of apartments. And these space heaters were cheap for the landlord to put in the house, but they cost a lot to run because they weren't very efficient. Plus they were sometimes producing carbon monoxide and sometimes a fire hazard. And they were just a terrible way to heat a house in Baltimore, but they were cheap for the landlord. Mm-hmm. So we went to the city council. It was supposed to start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We got there a little before 2, up in the gallery so we could look down on the council and their proceedings. And it was empty. And we heard that the whole city council was in the council president's office in some side conference room, and they were in some meeting before the meeting. And we waited more than half an hour. I think it was 45 minutes till they finally came out and started the meeting. In the meeting, I think probably 12 to 15 people testified on all the reasons these space heaters were a bad idea. And one person testified on behalf of the landlords to say, we can't afford to put anything better in these houses. And then they took a vote. And the vote was overwhelmingly to vote down the ordinance to allow them to keep using those space heaters.
Oh my.
And so my political education was to realize that in the backroom meeting, they were getting their instructions on this is how this vote will go, no matter what you hear. And it was just, I mean, now I see it everywhere, but it was an example of how money and influence gets its way. And the good of people, the common good, does not get its way.
How do you think that's affected you as a peacemaker? Did it open your eyes?
Well,
Were you angry?
I mean, it's just a piece of seeing that there is no, that sometimes I don't know if something is peace or justice, because in some ways they're the same, in some ways they're each need the other. Mm-hmm. You can't have one with the other. And I would say now that all of my life I've been a conscientious objector to war. The violence of war has been a part of how I understand who I'm supposed to be as a peacemaker. But I would tell you now that I am sure economic violence destroys more lives, ruins more communities, impoverishes and diminishes more people than war ever has. And economic violence goes on every day all around. It is, and I get more angry about that, about the way the rich, whether they're corporations or rich families, can just get what they want. And we know the rich in many parts of the world, and especially in the U.S., the rich keep getting richer. That just keeps going on at everyone else's expense. So, yeah, economic violence to me is maybe at the root of everything. In the book of James, it says, what causes fightings among you? You want what you don't have, and so you fight.
Yeah.
And if you take that to a social scale, it's the greed, corporate greed even, that causes violence of all kinds, that causes war, that causes poverty. It's all rooted in that kind of greed.